Is there anything in particular you want to speak about, as apart from the IEC and free and fair election?
If we have time, we can slip in, a topical issue in terms of the national head count. We know the ANC will win, so that's a given, But the main issue is about who will get control of South Africa's economic heartland, which is Gauteng.
Okay, we can speak about that.
The scenarios that are panning out there is that the ANC might drop below its 2014 results, necessitating the need for a coalition for the ANC. So we can have a discussion about which is the best coalition. Is it an ANC, EFF, or is it a...
Netwerk 24 se spesiale verkiesingsgids is die plek om te wees as jy al die nuus en uitslae van minuut tot minuut in Afrikaans wil kry. Volg die regstreekse dekking en ontledings deur joernaliste landwyd en vanaf die nasionale uitslagsentrum. Interaktiewe kaarte wys die uitslae nasionaal vir elke provinsie, munisipaliteit en in jou stemdistrik. Vergelyk die uitslae en kieserstatistieke van die vorige 4 verkiesings om die grootste verskuiwings te sien. Maak seker jy die jongste weergawe van die Netwerk 24 app. As jy na die spesiale verkiesingsafdeling wil gaan, klik deur van die spesiale skakel bo aan die tuisblad of in die hoofnavigasieopsies op jou rekenaar en in die app. Volg dan al die nuus, regstreekse dekking, interaktiewe kaarte met uitslae, 'n oorsig oor politieke partye, video's en potsendings. Gaan na netwerk24.com vir al die verkiesingsaksie op een plek.
Goeienaand, welkom terug by Netwerk 24 se ateljee by die OVK se uitslagsentrum in Pretoria Wes, waar ons 'n bietjie gaan gesels oor vanjaar se verkiesing. My naam is Gert van Westhuizen en hier saam met my is Bonolo Selebano, politieke verslaggewer van Netwerk 24. Good evening, Bonolo.
Good evening and thanks.
Bonolo, it has been quite a rocky start to the day.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think the main takeaway from election day today is the IEC's efforts to maintain the integrity of the electoral process. It comes against the background of the IEC having conceded that by 5 o'clock earlier this afternoon, 5 of its 29,924 voting stations had remained closed.
So if people at 5 voting stations couldn't vote, can it still be a free and fair election?
Well, let's just unpack it. What would qualify an election to be free and fair?
Generally free and fair.
Generally free and fair. First and foremost, every voter, every citizen who is entitled to vote has to be given an equal opportunity to register. Secondly, that voter has to be given an equal opportunity to vote. And lastly, they have to vote. Further to that, all of their votes have to be counted. Not some of their votes or
But
most
all
of their
votes,
votes,
yeah.
but all of their votes have to be counted. Now, hypothetically speaking, let's say, the IEC managed to turn the situation around and by 6 o'clock they had opened their voting stations. But keep in mind that by 9 o'clock, voting stations are supposed to close,
Yes.
and the process of counting has to begin.
They've said at 9 o'clock that they've already begun with the process of counting.
So
Yes.
I think they have a case to answer as to what happened to those 5 voting stations. And before we move on, I just wanted to add something. 3 of the voting stations that had closed were in KZN.
Yes.
It doesn't come as a surprise because leading up to this election, the police actually identified KZN as an election hotspot, as an area that was probably prone to some sort of unrest.
But why? Why again? Why KZN? One would have thought that they've solved all the problems in the past. That is not that the ANC IFP battle is not that strong anymore. That it's not something people are doing now, and that with the free and fair political situation in KwaZulu-Natal. So you would say that's not the case now.
I think historically, KZN has always been a political hotbed for violence.
And it will never go away then?
It will never go away. I mean, recently as well, KZN was rocked by a spate of xenophobic attacks against foreign nationals in the, Durban informal settlements. So it really doesn't come as a surprise that KZN experienced community unrest on voting day.
Yeah, I've even heard some allegations from the IFP that the ANC took some illegal aliens, that they call them, to vote polling booths. So the whole war of words have started again. They started again.
It definitely has. I mean, earlier this afternoon, the EFF also accused ANC leaders in certain communities around the northwest of having voted twice in 2 different voting stations. You must have heard the issue about the ink.
Yeah, the ink.
The indelible ink that indicates
washes
whether
away quite easily.
Precisely,
Apparently.
the ink indicates whether a voter has voted. Now, reports came in that this ink was easily removable, and this allowed people to vote twice in 2
even
different
3
voting.
times. Some allegations have it that people even voted 3 times. But let's return to the question: should we then consider this election free and fair? Generally free and fair.
I think every election has its imperfections, but generally in the main, the election has to reflect the will of the electorate. And in this case, can we answer to that effect? I mean, the biggest hiccup was the issue about the 5 voting stations. There were other minor hiccups about the shortage of voting ballots, but that issue was quickly resolved. There were issues in Vuwane as well, where voting stations were temporarily closed.
Because of the boycott.
Because of the boycotts, but interventions were made and they were subsequently reopened. So those issues were resolved. The biggest issue is about these 5 voting stations. The IEC has to come out sooner rather than later to tell us what happened. Did they open before 9 o'clock? Will these voters
They
be
didn't
given...
even mention that fact in the 9 o'clock statement.
They issued a statement and
it wasn't mentioned.
Nothing much was said about that.
But then, okay, let's look. Is it free and fair? Can it be regarded as free and fair election generally?
According to the Constitution, if a voter is denied the right to vote,
then it's not free and
then
fair.
it's not free and fair.
So this is not a free and fair election then.
Well, the IEC has to give us the answers. What happened to those 5 voting
But do you
stations?
think the IEC is struggling for credibility at the moment?
I mean, this definitely reflects poorly on the IEC. They've had 5 years to plan for this. They should have planned for any type of eventuality.
But none of our elections in the past have been without allegations of people voting twice, too few ballot papers. There's always been hiccups.
There's always been hiccups.
And there always will be, I suppose.
There will always be hiccups, but the extent to these hiccups and the veracity to these hiccups matter? And if these, and the question has to be asked: will these hiccups have bearing on the idea of a free and fair election?
Yeah, because even James South, the DA, told us earlier that they are prepared to go to court for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think
then the whole thing will be dragged out.
Yeah, I think the IEC finds itself in a vulnerable position. They have opened themselves up for questioning. And I think political parties might exploit that opportunity already. I think 5 objections have already been made against to the IEC with regard to the very same issues that we are discussing here. So they definitely have a case to answer.
Well, so the general turnout of voters, how would you see that? Do you think not enough voters registered? I think 9 million eligible voters didn't register, and we've only heard snatches of voter turnout in some country areas. It was not good in some urban areas. It was better.
Yeah.
How do you see the picture? Do you think the turnout reflects in the end the results will reflect the will of the population then, if enough people turned out?
We did hear anecdotal reports of slow starts.
Yes.
To voting day. We did hear that in certain areas in the northwest and in townships around Johannesburg as well, the voter turnout was quite low there. But again, it shouldn't be surprising because we have, the IEC recently announced that we are 26 million registered voters, and about 9 million.
Register,
9 million of those registered voters did not actually turn out on voting day. So there is definitely a sense of apathy and disconnect.
Why do you think there is the apathy and the disconnectedness? What would you see as the reasons for that?
Well, the majority of the 9 million voters who did not turn out are South Africa's youth. Now, the youth bear the brunt of the social ills that we currently face.
Yes.
When we speak of unemployment, it has a young face.
Yes.
When we speak about lack of access to healthcare, education, a young face is put on that. So definitely, I think young people feel a sense of apathy and disconnect to participate in the affairs of the state because they feel that their voice will not make a material difference to their life conditions.
Why do they feel like that? Because the face of the future is also young in South Africa.
Let's look at the political parties themselves, right? Let's look at the list of the ANC, right? What is the youth and gender balance on the list of ANC members who will be going to Parliament and being public representatives? I think the ANC and political parties in their lists have to embody the aspirations of young people in society.
Did any party do that in this election? I think the EFF in a certain way did that.
The EFF have tried. I think the swaths of young people in their list will be going to Parliament. And they did try to align their election manifesto to the aspirations of young people and their supporters. And it doesn't come as a surprise and you'll find that young people tend to gravitate more towards the EFF.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is an issue that political parties, over the years, they've generally struggled to do that. How do they align the election manifesto to the aspirations of young people, and especially women, which constitute the majority of South African
But that shouldn't
citizens?
actually be a problem after 25 years of democracy. Why is it still a problem? Shouldn't the political parties do more about it? Shouldn't they actually go out and tell people to register and try to influence them to register?
It's a problem because politics is also seen as a means of private advancement. So political party leaders, I don't think they would want to give up their seats in Parliament for young people to come in.
Yeah.
Other than politics, can they survive in a normal economy? So I think, and again, if you look at cabinet reshuffles as well, it's been generally a case of musical chairs, the same faces rearranged to different positions. And this is part of the apathy and disconnect.
So the blame for the apathy should actually be put on the political parties themselves.
It rests on the political parties themselves.
But talking about political parties, it seems that there's going to be quite a struggle in Gauteng.
Yes, if the pre-election polls are anything to go by, certainly control of South Africa's economic heartland is up for grabs. And the scenarios that have been painted there is that the ANC might drop below its 2014 provincial results in Gauteng, which might necessitate the need for the ANC to coalesce into a coalition with another political party to maintain its majority. And the options there are, should the ANC go with the EFF or should the ANC go with the DA? Let's explore these two alternatives.
People say that if the EFF goes with the ANC, it will be swallowed up.
You know, the EFF has always identified itself as an alternative, a more radical alternative to the ANC.
To the ANC, yes.
They've crafted their identity in that particular mold. Now, if they coalesce into a coalition with the ANC, the EFF can be seen as an appendage of a larger version of itself, which means that they might risk being swallowed up into the ANC. So
are there other parties the EFF could look at for coalitions and even in future as well? Because I see Irvin Jim's party and the EFF, actually they stand for the same thing.
They stand for the same thing. They essentially fighting for the same pool of voters. But the question is, again, why would a voter vote for a party that realistically will not get enough votes to get seats in parliament? And this is, perhaps it speaks to the proliferation of political parties who will be contesting in this year's election. We have 48 on the ballot. The largest,
that's quite a lot.
The largest that we've seen in our democratic dispensation.
Do you think that shows that our democracy is maturing when we have that many parties?
One can say it's indicative of a flourishing democracy because a strength of a democracy has to be judged by the strength of its opposition.
Yes.
But the argument can also be made that perhaps it's indicative to how divided we are as a society. And
if you look at it like that, 48 parties, we should actually be worried.
We should.
About the divisions in society.
We should. So I mean, it's between 40 to 45,000 votes for a seat in parliament. You know, why would a voter vote for a fringe political party that has no access or proximity to political party to affect the kind of changes that they want to see?
So actually, if they do that, they waste their votes.
It could be a wasted vote.
But I interrupted you. You were talking about possible coalitions in Gauteng. Yeah.
Possible coalitions.
The ANC and the EFF and the ANC and the DA.
So,
and maybe even the EFF and the DA. What's the chance of that?
You know, just to drive my point home on the EFF issue, from a strategic point of view, I don't think it would serve the EFF well if they partner with the ANC. But the argument has also been made. Pundits have also said, well, a stable provincial government would be ANC and DA coalition, because in terms of raw policy, there's little essential difference between the ANC and the DA. But the challenge is, how will the ANC communicate this decision to its voters and supporters to coalesce into a coalition with the DA?
That's going to be a tough one.
You know, but again, an ANC-EFF coalition, you know, one of the drawbacks of that is that for the ANC to maintain this coalition, it will have to give in to the EFF's more radical demands, especially on the issue of land expropriation without compensation. They believe in the same principle, but the modalities and implementation thereof is radically different.
Yeah, so that's going to be a tough one. And you think the possibility of the DA and the EFF working together like they did in Joburg and in Tshwane after the municipal elections of 2016?
It's possible. You know, they did it in 2016, and I think that proved that ideological differences are not essential to maintain or to sustain.
Yeah, it actually worked quite well, but not in Nelson Mandela Bay, where it floundered on the issue of land.
I think each case has to be looked at on its own merits. In Johannesburg, it seems like it's working. You know, the EFF are quite happy with
Although
Mashaba.
they didn't want Mashaba to start with.
They didn't want him, now they want him. Mashaba is giving in to the EFF's calls for insourcing. and other related issues as well. So it seems to be working in Johannesburg, not working elsewhere, but it has to be looked at on its own merits.
Yeah, no, that's not going to be easy though. So in other provinces, KZN especially, if 2 or 3 of the voting stations that didn't open at 5 o'clock were in KZN. How do you think things are going to play out in KZN? Do you think the IFP will gain more support? Do you think it benefits them if the voter turnout is not that good?
That's a difficult one, Again, I think in the run-up to today's vote, Ipsos as well as the South African Institute for Race Relations released their own pre-election polling. Both of these polling reports don't speak to each other. The Institute for Race Relations suggests that KZN is up for grabs. Ipsos seems to suggest that the ANC will win comfortably in KZN and Gauteng as well. So at this point in time, I think the final result will only reveal the outcome.
How seriously should we take these polls?
I think we should be mindful of them because essentially it captures what voter sentiment at that specific time. Of course, it's subject to change. It can change at any moment. But I think it is important to know what voters feel at the time of going into voting. So I don't think we can just discard them in their totality.
Because people are influenced easily by things that's happening. Something might have happened after the pollster spoke to them.
Yeah, precisely.
So when do you think we should expect the first results?
The IEC indicated that after midnight, the first batch of results will start to trickle in rather. So I think after midnight and the early morning, we'll start to get a sense of what was happening on voting day.
When do you think we'll have a nice and a clear idea of what's going to happen in Gauteng, a hotly contested Gauteng?
I think by Friday. By Friday we'll get to have a clearer picture as to which party will dominate in the province.
Yes, and KZN, what do you think is going to happen there?
I think KZN historically has been an ANC stronghold. I think the ANC will retain KZN. I think the IFP might cut into the ANC's electoral base, but not enough to bring the ANC down to the point where they might need a coalition to maintain its majority in KZN.
Well, thanks a lot, Bonolo. It was very nice talking to you.
My pleasure.
And we'll certainly do so again in the days to follow.
Will do. Thank you.
Baie dankie dat julle geluister het na ons gesprek en ons is môreoggend weer terug op die lug.